In the waning light of a crisp autumn evening, the cobblestone streets of London glistened with the remnants of an afternoon shower. Gas lamps flickered to life as darkness descended upon the city, casting elongated shadows that danced along the fog-laden pathways. A solitary carriage, its ebony exterior reflecting the dim light of the moon, traversed through the narrow streets, its wheels creating a rhythmic cadence against the wet stones. Within the confines of the carriage sat Lord Everett Blackwood, his angular features accentuated by the interplay of light and shadow. His gloved fingers drummed impatiently against his walking cane, the silver wolf's head handle gleaming ominously. The journey from his ancestral estate in the countryside to the heart of London had been arduous, but necessity had compelled his return. "We shall arrive momentarily, my lord," announced the coachman, his voice barely audible through the carriage window. Lord Blackwood's lips curled into a contemplative smile. "Very well, Thompson. Proceed directly to Ravenscroft Manor. I wish not to delay any further." The carriage veered sharply around a corner, revealing the imposing silhouette of Ravenscroft Manor, a Gothic structure that stood in defiance of the modern architecture surrounding it. Its spires pierced the night sky like accusatory fingers, while gargoyles perched along its parapets, silent sentinels guarding ancient secrets. As the carriage approached the wrought iron gates, they swung open as if by an unseen hand, permitting entry to the circular driveway. The manor's facade loomed larger with each passing moment, its windows illuminated by a ghostly light from within. Upon reaching the entrance, the carriage halted. Thompson descended from his position, opening the door with a practiced bow. "We have arrived, my lord." Lord Blackwood emerged from the carriage, his tall figure cutting a striking silhouette against the backdrop of the manor. "Await my further instructions, Thompson. I anticipate my business here shall not exceed the hour." The grand oak doors of the manor swung open, revealing the slender figure of Mrs. Holloway, the housekeeper, her severe countenance softened slightly at the sight of her master. "Lord Blackwood, what a most unexpected pleasure. We had not anticipated your return until the fortnight's end," she declared, her voice carrying the weight of unspoken questions. "Circumstances have altered, Mrs. Holloway. I trust the manor has been maintained to my exacting standards during my absence," Lord Blackwood inquired, removing his gloves with deliberate precision. "Indeed, my lord. Everything remains as you left it," she affirmed, stepping aside to permit his entry into the grand foyer. The interior of Ravenscroft Manor was a testament to generations of aristocratic heritage. Crystal chandeliers hung from vaulted ceilings, casting prismatic reflections upon marble floors. Ancestral portraits adorned the walls, the eyes of Blackwood predecessors following Lord Everett as he traversed the hallway. "Has there been any correspondence of note?" he inquired, handing his coat to Mrs. Holloway. "Only one, my lord. A missive arrived this very morning from Lady Eleanor Huntington. I placed it upon your desk in the study," she replied, her expression betraying a hint of curiosity. Lord Blackwood's countenance darkened momentarily before composing itself into a mask of indifference. "I see. I shall attend to it forthwith. Have a pot of Ceylon tea brought to the study, and I am not to be disturbed unless it is a matter of utmost urgency." "As you wish, my lord," Mrs. Holloway acknowledged with a curtsy before departing toward the servants' quarters. Lord Blackwood proceeded to the eastern wing of the manor, where his private study was situated. The room was a sanctuary of knowledge, with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves housing rare manuscripts and first editions. A mahogany desk commanded the center of the room, upon which rested a sealed envelope bearing the Huntington family crest. With careful deliberation, he broke the wax seal and extracted the parchment within. As his eyes scanned the elegant script, his expression transformed from curiosity to grave concern. "My dearest Everett," the letter began, "I write to you with a heart burdened by fear. Strange occurrences have befallen Thornfield Hall. Servants speak of shadowy figures prowling the grounds under moonlight, and items of significant value have mysteriously vanished. Most disturbing of all, my beloved sister Catherine has fallen gravely ill with a malady that confounds our physicians. She speaks of crimson shadows and whispers in the night. I implore you, for the sake of our shared history, come to Thornfield with haste. Yours in desperation, Eleanor." Lord Blackwood placed the letter upon his desk, his mind racing with implications. The Huntingtons had been allies of the Blackwood family for generations, and Eleanor had once been betrothed to his late brother, Alexander. Whatever peril now threatened their household demanded his attention, particularly the mention of crimson shadows, a phrase that resonated with ominous significance. A gentle knock interrupted his contemplation. "Enter," he commanded. Mrs. Holloway appeared with a silver tray bearing a teapot and a single porcelain cup. "Your tea, my lord. Place it here," he instructed, gesturing to a vacant space on his desk, and inform Thompson that we shall be departing for Thornfield Hall at first light. Thornfield Hall, my lord. But you have only just returned, she protested, unable to conceal her surprise. Indeed, Mrs. Holloway, and circumstances dictate that I must depart once more. Prepare a valise with sufficient attire for a fortnight's stay, he declared with finality. As Mrs. Holloway departed, Lord Blackwood approached a concealed panel within the bookshelf. With practiced movements, he activated a hidden mechanism, revealing a secret compartment. From within, he extracted an ancient leather-bound tome, its cover embossed with arcane symbols, and a silver dagger with inscriptions etched along its blade. So it begins anew, he murmured to himself, his voice barely above a whisper. The shadows stir once more, and I must answer the call, as did my father before me, and his father before him. With resolute determination, he placed the tome and dagger within a concealed inner pocket of his waistcoat. Whatever malevolence had descended upon Thornfield Hall, Lord Everett Blackwood would confront it, armed with the ancient knowledge and tools passed down through generations of his bloodline, guardians against a darkness few could comprehend, fewer still could combat. As night deepened over London, Lord Blackwood prepared for the impending confrontation with an adversary he had hoped never to encounter again, an entity that existed between the realms of the living and the dead, feeding upon fear and despair, leaving naught but crimson shadows in its wake. The journey to Thornfield Hall traversed the undulating countryside of northern England, where rolling moors stretched endlessly beneath a sky heavy with leaden clouds. Lord Blackwood observed the passing landscape through the carriage window, his thoughts consumed by the enigmatic letter and the portentous task that awaited him. "We approach Thornfield, my lord," Thompson announced, as the carriage crested a hill, revealing a vast estate nestled within a valley of ancient oak trees. Thornfield Hall stood in stark contrast to the Gothic austerity of Ravenscroft Manor. Its architecture was more refined, with Georgian symmetry and large windows that would, on sunnier days, flood its interior with light. Yet, as the carriage drew nearer, Lord Blackwood discerned a palpable aura of foreboding surrounding the once vibrant estate. The gardens, renowned for their meticulous upkeep, now displayed signs of neglect, and several windows remained shuttered despite the daylight hour. "A most troubling transformation," Lord Blackwood muttered to himself as the carriage halted before the main entrance. A butler, his attire impeccable despite the strained expression upon his face, greeted Lord Blackwood as he alighted from the carriage. "Lord Blackwood, we are most grateful for your arrival. Lady Eleanor has been anticipating your presence with great urgency. If you would be so kind as to follow me." "How fares Lady Catherine?" Lord Blackwood inquired, matching stride with the butler as they entered the grand foyer. The butler's countenance darkened. "Her condition deteriorates with each passing day, my lord. The physicians are confounded, and Lady Eleanor grows increasingly distraught." The interior of Thornfield Hall bore testament to generations of refinement and taste. Delicate frescoes adorned the ceilings, and priceless artworks hung upon walls covered in imported silk. Yet a subtle disarray permeated the environment. Dust gathered upon surfaces typically immaculate, and the air carried a lingering chill, despite the fires burning in multiple hearths. "Lord Blackwood!" The voice, though attempting to project strength, betrayed underlying exhaustion and fear. Lady Eleanor Huntington descended the grand staircase, her normally vibrant beauty diminished by evident lack of sleep and constant worry. Her raven hair was secured in a simple chignon, and her attire, while appropriate, lacked the customary attention to detail for which she was known in London society. "Eleanor," Lord Blackwood acknowledged, taking her extended hand and bowing slightly, "your letter conveyed most troubling circumstances. Words cannot adequately describe the afflictions that have befallen our household," she responded, her voice lowered, as if fearful of being overheard by unseen presences. "Come, let us speak in the library. We shall not be disturbed there." The library of Thornfield Hall was a magnificent chamber, housing literary treasures collected by generations of Huntingtons. Floor-to-ceiling shelves contained volumes bound in leather and vellum, while a massive globe stood near the fireplace, its surface depicting a world less thoroughly charted than in present times. Once the door was secured, Eleanor's composed facade crumbled slightly. "Everett, I fear we are besieged by forces beyond mortal comprehension." It began with whispers, servants claiming to hear voices emanating from unoccupied chambers. Then came the disappearances, small items initially, then family heirlooms of considerable value. Lord Blackwood listened intently, his expression grave. "And what of Catherine? Your letter mentioned an illness." Eleanor's eyes glistened with unshed tears. 3 weeks passed, Catherine awakened in the night, screaming of a presence in her bedchamber, a shadow deeper than the darkness, with eyes of crimson flame. We dismissed it as a nightmare, but the following morning she could not rise from her bed. Her strength wanes daily, her skin grows pallid, and physicians can identify no physical cause for her deterioration. Has she spoken of these crimson shadows since that night? Lord Blackwood inquired, his tone measured. In moments of lucidity, yes. She describes a figure that visits her during the witching hour, feeding upon her very essence. The servants whisper of vampiric entities, though I chastise such superstitious discourse, Eleanor replied, her voice trembling slightly. Lord Blackwood approached the window, gazing out at the encroaching twilight. Your instinct to summon me was correct, Eleanor. What afflicts Thornfield Hall and Lady Catherine is indeed beyond conventional understanding, yet not unknown to the Blackwood lineage. Eleanor's eyes widened. You recognize this malevolence? The entity you describe is known by many names throughout various cultures and epochs. In ancient texts, it is referred to as a sanguine spectre, a parasitic entity that exists between realms, sustaining itself by draining the life essence of the living, Lord Blackwood explained, his voice devoid of emotion, though his eyes betrayed a deeper concern. Can such an abomination be vanquished? Eleanor inquired, her voice barely above a whisper. Lord Blackwood turned to face her, his expression resolute. With considerable difficulty and risk, yes. The knowledge has been preserved within my family for generations, passed down from father to son, along with the responsibility to confront such entities when they manifest. Alexander spoke of family secrets, though he never elaborated upon their nature, Eleanor remarked, a flicker of remembrance crossing her features at the mention of Lord Blackwood's deceased brother. Alexander was bound by the same oaths that constrain me, Lord Blackwood acknowledged solemnly. Now I must see Catherine immediately and assess the extent of the entity's influence. Eleanor nodded, visibly relieved to have transferred some burden of responsibility. She resides in the East Wing, in the Blue Room. I shall accompany you. As they traversed the corridors of Thornfield Hall, Lord Blackwood noted subtle manifestations of the supernatural presence, an unnatural chill in certain passages, the inexplicable extinguishing of candles as they approached, and the unmistakable sensation of being observed by unseen eyes. The servants refused to enter this wing after nightfall, Eleanor explained, as they approached an ornately carved door. Only myself and Catherine's lady's maid attend to her needs. Lord Blackwood nodded in understanding. A wise precaution, though insufficient against such an adversary. Eleanor hesitated before the door, her hand upon the handle. I must warn you, Everett. Catherine's appearance has altered dramatically. Prepare yourself for a distressing sight. With those words of caution, she opened the door to reveal a bedchamber bathed in subdued light. Heavy curtains had been drawn across the windows, permitting only minimal illumination. The air within was stagnant and carried a faint metallic scent that Lord Blackwood recognized with growing alarm. Upon a four-poster bed, surrounded by pillows that accentuated her diminished form, lay Lady Catherine Huntington. Once renowned for her vibrant beauty and lively temperament, she now resembled a porcelain figure. Her skin translucent, blue veins visible beneath the surface, her once golden hair now lusterless and limp around her gaunt features. Catherine, I have brought Lord Blackwood to see you, Eleanor announced softly, approaching the bed with gentle steps. Catherine's eyelids fluttered open, revealing eyes once azure, now faded to a pale, watery blue. Her gaze, initially unfocused, sharpened upon recognizing Lord Blackwood. With evident effort she attempted to speak, her voice a fragile whisper. You have come. As I dreamed you would, she managed, each word clearly requiring tremendous exertion. It grows stronger with each visitation. Soon I shall be but an empty vessel. Lord Blackwood approached the bedside, his trained eye discerning the unmistakable signs of a sanguine spectre's feeding, the bluish discoloration at the throat, the unusual pallor and the distinctive pattern of diminishing vitality. Lady Catherine, I give you my solemn oath that I shall confront this entity and halt its predations, he declared, his voice carrying the weight of ancestral duty. A ghost of a smile touched Catherine's lips. You always were the most formidable of men, Lord Blackwood. Even the shadows feared your approach. As night descended upon Thornfield Hall, Lord Blackwood secluded himself within the chamber allocated to him, spreading the ancient tome upon a writing desk illuminated by candlelight. The leather-bound volume, entitled Umbra Sanguinis in faded golden script, contained knowledge compiled by generations of Blackwoods, guardians against supernatural entities that occasionally breached the veil between realms. The pages, yellowed with age and inscribed with meticulous calligraphy, detailed the nature of sanguine spectres and the methodologies required for their banishment. Lord Blackwood's fingers traced the archaic text, refreshing his memory of rituals performed but twice in his lifetime, once under his father's guidance and once alone in the remote highlands of Scotland. A gentle knock upon his door interrupted his concentration. "Enter," he commanded, closing the tome with practiced swiftness. Mrs. Peterson, the housekeeper of Thornfield Hall, appeared with a silver tray bearing a decanter of brandy and a single glass. "Lady Eleanor thought you might desire refreshment, my lord." "Most considerate," Lord Blackwood acknowledged, gesturing toward a side table. "Tell me, Mrs. Peterson, how long have you served at Thornfield?" 23 years, my lord," she replied, setting down the tray. "I arrived as a young woman and have witnessed both joyous and sorrowful occasions within these walls." Lord Blackwood studied her weathered countenance, recognizing the shrewd intelligence behind her deferential demeanor. "Then you would be intimately familiar with the estate's history and any peculiarities it might possess." Mrs. Peterson's posture stiffened almost imperceptibly. "Thornfield has its secrets, as do all great houses, my lord." "Indeed," Lord Blackwood concurred, pouring himself a measure of brandy. "I require information regarding any chambers, passages, or areas of the estate that have historical associations with tragedy, unexplained phenomena, or deaths of unusual circumstance." The housekeeper's eyes widened momentarily before she composed her expression. "There is the North Tower, my lord. It has remained sealed since the unfortunate demise of the previous Lord Huntington, Lady Eleanor and Lady Catherine's father. He was discovered there under distressing circumstances. Lady Eleanor has forbidden any servant from approaching it." "Distressing in what manner, precisely?" Lord Blackwood inquired, sipping the brandy with deliberate calmness. Mrs. Peterson hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. "It is not my place to speak of such matters, my lord. However, if you were to inquire with Mr. Graves, the butler, he was among those who discovered the late Lord Huntington. He might provide more detailed information should you deem it necessary." Lord Blackwood nodded, dismissing her with a gesture. "Your assistance is appreciated, Mrs. Peterson. Please inform Mr. Graves that I wish to speak with him at his earliest convenience." Once alone, Lord Blackwood returned to the tome, his suspicions partially confirmed. Sanguine spectres required an anchoring point, a location saturated with emotional residue of tragedy or violence, from which to extend their influence. The North Tower, sealed and forbidden, presented the most probable site for such an anchor. An hour later, a knock announced the arrival of Mr. Graves, the butler whose stern demeanor concealed a nervous disposition evident in his constantly adjusting cuffs. "You wish to see me, Lord Blackwood?" he inquired with formal deference. "Indeed, Mr. Graves. I understand you were present at the discovery of the late Lord Huntington's body in the North Tower. I require a comprehensive account of what you witnessed," Lord Blackwood stated without preamble. The butler's complexion paled visibly. "My lord, that was a most distressing occurrence that we have endeavored to forget. Nevertheless, it may be intrinsically connected to the current afflictions besetting this household. Your recollection could prove invaluable," Lord Blackwood insisted, his tone brooking no refusal. Mr. Graves exhaled deeply before speaking. "It was 7 years past, during a particularly harsh winter. Lord Huntington had been behaving erratically for several weeks, secluding himself in his study, receiving strange correspondence, and venturing out at unusual hours. One morning, he could not be located for breakfast. A search ensued, culminating in the North Tower, which had been abandoned for decades due to structural concerns." The butler paused, visibly distressed by the recollection. Lord Blackwood waited patiently, allowing the man to compose himself before continuing. "We discovered him in the uppermost chamber, my lord. The scene defied comprehension. Lord Huntington lay upon the floor, surrounded by peculiar symbols drawn in, substances I dare not specify. His expression was one of abject terror, and his body bore no wounds, yet was entirely drained of blood. The physicians could provide no explanation, and Lady Eleanor, to protect her sister and the family reputation, declared it a heart seizure." Lord Blackwood's expression remained impassive, though internally the account confirmed his gravest suspicions. "Were any unusual objects found within the chamber?" "Only an antique mirror of unusual design, positioned at the center of the symbols. Lady Eleanor ordered it locked away in the estate's vault, considering it a morbid reminder of her father's demise," Mr. Graves replied, his voice barely above a whisper. "I require access to both the North Tower and this mirror," Lord Blackwood declared, rising from his seat. "Immediately." The butler's eyes widened with alarm. "The tower remains sealed by Lady Eleanor's explicit command, my lord, and the vault key remains solely in her possession." "Then we shall seek her authorization forthwith," Lord Blackwood stated, striding toward the door. "The circumstances are far more dire than Lady Eleanor comprehends, and delays may prove fatal to Lady Catherine." Together, they located Lady Eleanor in the music room, where she sat motionless before a pianoforte, her fingers resting upon the keys without producing sound. Upon hearing their approach, she turned, her expression questioning. "Everett, has there been a development?" she inquired, noting their serious demeanors. Lord Blackwood approached directly, his manner grave yet gentle. "Eleanor, I must speak candidly. The entity afflicting Catherine and Thornfield Hall is intrinsically connected to your father's demise and the mirror discovered beside him. I require immediate access to both the North Tower and this artifact." Eleanor's face drained of color. "How could you possibly know of the mirror? That information has remained strictly within the household. The Blackwood family has encountered such entities before. Your father inadvertently summoned a sanguine spectre through the mirror, which served as a portal between realms. His death was merely the beginning of its manifestation, and now, years later, it has gathered sufficient strength to extend its influence throughout Thornfield, with Catherine as its primary victim," Lord Blackwood explained, his tone measured but urgent. Eleanor rose from the pianoforte bench, her composure wavering. "Father was researching ancient occult practices in the months before his death. I discovered correspondence with scholars of esoteric subjects among his papers, but dismissed them as academic curiosities." "They were considerably more than curiosities, I fear," Lord Blackwood responded grimly. "The mirror must be brought to the North Tower before midnight if we are to perform the ritual of banishment. Each hour that passes strengthens the entity's hold upon Catherine." With visible reluctance, Eleanor retrieved an ornate key from a chain around her neck. "This unlocks both the vault and the North Tower. I shall accompany you." "I must advise against your presence during the ritual, Eleanor. The procedure involves considerable risk to all participants," Lord Blackwood cautioned. Eleanor's expression hardened with determination. "Catherine is my only remaining family, Everett. I shall not abandon her to face this peril alone, nor shall I place the entire burden upon your shoulders. I accompanied you on many adventures in our youth, if you recall." A ghost of a smile touched Lord Blackwood's lips. "Your courage remains undiminished, I see. Very well. But you must adhere to my instructions without question or hesitation. The consequences of interference could prove catastrophic." With Eleanor's assistance, they recovered the mirror from the estate's vault, an oval-looking glass encased in a frame of blackened silver, adorned with intricate engravings of arcane symbols and mythological creatures. Even within its protective cloth wrapping, Lord Blackwood sensed its malevolent aura, a subtle vibration that resonated with the darker aspects of human consciousness. As they ascended the winding staircase of the North Tower, the atmosphere grew increasingly oppressive. Cobwebs festooned the stone walls, and the air became stagnant, carrying a faint metallic scent that Lord Blackwood recognized as residual manifestations of the sanguine spectre's presence. The uppermost chamber remained exactly as described, a circular room with a domed ceiling, its floor still bearing the faded outlines of arcane symbols despite attempts to scrub them away. Moonlight filtered through a single window, casting elongated shadows across the ancient stones. "The ritual must commence at the witching hour," Lord Blackwood declared, placing the mirror at the center of the chamber. "We have limited time for preparation." From his valise, he extracted the components necessary for the ritual: silver candles imbued with specific herbs and resins, vials of consecrated water from 7 sacred springs, and pouches containing powdered minerals with protective properties. With methodical precision, he arranged these items according to the patterns detailed in the Umbra Sanguinis, creating a barrier between the mirror and the remainder of the chamber. "What role shall I play in this ritual?" Eleanor inquired, observing his preparations with a mixture of fascination and trepidation. "You shall serve as anchor and witness," Lord Blackwood explained, removing his frock coat and waistcoat to allow greater freedom of movement. "The entity will attempt to dissuade us through illusions, threats, and possibly physical manifestations. Your task is to maintain focus upon this protective amulet, regardless of what transpires." He presented her with a silver medallion inscribed with protective sigils, suspended from a chain of similar composition. "Under no circumstances are you to remove this amulet or step beyond the circle I shall establish around you. Do I have your solemn word?" Eleanor accepted the medallion, securing it around her neck with trembling fingers. "You have my word, Everett. I shall not interfere, regardless of appearances." As midnight approached, Lord Blackwood completed the protective circle around Eleanor, positioning her at the western point of the chamber. He then retrieved the silver dagger from its sheath, using its tip to draw his own blood, which he allowed to drip upon specific points around the mirror. "Blood of the Guardian, freely given, establishes the bridge between realms," he intoned, his voice resonating with authority derived from ancestral legacy. "By rights of lineage and duty, I summon forth the entity known as Sanguine Spectre, compelling its manifestation within this consecrated space." The chamber's atmosphere altered perceptibly. The temperature plummeted, causing their breath to crystallize before them, while the silver candle's flames elongated unnaturally, casting writhing shadows upon the walls. The mirror's surface began to undulate like disturbed water, its reflection distorting into impossible geometries. "Witness now the face of your adversary," Lord Blackwood commanded, his voice unwavering despite the supernatural manifestations surrounding them. From the depths of the mirror emerged a figure of shadow deeper than the absence of light, a humanoid silhouette, with elongated limbs and features that shifted constantly, defying fixed form. Only its eyes remained constant, orbs of crimson that burned with malevolent intelligence and ancient hunger. "Blackwood blood," it hissed, its voice a discordant symphony of countless whispers. "How fitting that another of your lineage should offer himself to my embrace. Your ancestor failed to destroy me, merely binding me to this accursed mirror. You shall fare no better." Lord Blackwood remained unaffected by its provocations, continuing the ritual with disciplined focus. "By the covenant established between the Blackwood Guardians and the Council of Light, I bind you to reveal your true name." The entity writhed within the confines of the mirror, clearly resistant to the compulsion. "You think yourself powerful, Everett Blackwood. Observe how thoroughly I have infiltrated this household." The chamber filled with illusions, spectral recreations of Thornfield's inhabitants, including Catherine in her current emaciated state, their expressions contorted with agony, as shadowy tendrils extracted their life essence. Eleanor gasped but maintained her position, clutching the amulet with white-knuckled determination. "Parlor tricks will not deter me," Lord Blackwood declared, raising the silver dagger. "Reveal your name or face dissolution into the void between realms." With a shriek that shattered several of the silver candles, the entity relented. "I am Morbidus, devourer of vitality, collector of final breaths." "Morbidus," Lord Blackwood repeated, the name granting him power within the ritual's framework. "By your true name, I command your severance from the Huntington bloodline and Thornfield Hall." The entity's form solidified partially, extending beyond the mirror's confines in a desperate lunge toward Lord Blackwood. "The girl is already mine. Her essence sustains me, and soon she shall join me beyond the veil, becoming my eternal consort." Lord Blackwood stood unwavering before the manifesting entity, his ancestral dagger held aloft, its silver blade gleaming in the ethereal light. The chamber had transformed into a battleground between realms. Reality itself seemed to bend and distort around the mirror's periphery, where Morbidus struggled against the ritual's constraints. "Your claim upon Lady Catherine is illegitimate," Lord Blackwood declared, his voice carrying the authority of generations of guardians. "You were summoned through deception and trickery, feeding upon the curiosity of an unwitting scholar. Such bonds are vulnerable to dissolution by one who knows the ancient laws." Morbidus emitted a sound resembling shattered glass grinding against stone. "You understand nothing, Guardian. Lord Huntington summoned me willingly, offering his daughters as vessels for my manifestation in exchange for forbidden knowledge. The compact was sealed with his blood, willingly given." The revelation struck Eleanor with physical force, causing her to stagger within her protective circle. "Father would never," she began, her voice faltering as doubt clouded her features. "Silence!" Lord Blackwood commanded sharply. "It seeks to disrupt your concentration, Eleanor. Remember your pledge and maintain focus upon the amulet, regardless of the entity's claims." Returning his attention to Morbidus, Lord Blackwood continued the ritual, reciting passages from memory in an ancient language predating Latin. With each phrase, the entity's manifestation flickered like a flame in tempestuous winds. "Your machinations are transparent, Morbidus," Lord Blackwood declared. "You seek to fracture our resolve through falsehoods and misdirection, but the Blackwood line has confronted your kind for centuries, and we recognize the patterns of your deception." The entity's form expanded abruptly, tendrils of shadow lashing out to extinguish the remaining silver candles. Darkness momentarily engulfed the chamber before Lord Blackwood ignited a specially prepared torch, its flame burning with an intense blue light that forced the shadows into retreat. "By flame consecrated in the tears of martyrs, I illumine your darkness," he intoned. "By silver forged in the crucible of righteous purpose, I sever your influence." Morbidus shrieked, its form contracting around the mirror, You cannot banish me completely without destroying the vessel of summoning Blackwood. Are you prepared to eliminate a Huntington heirloom of considerable value? I would sacrifice every possession within Thornfield to save Catherine, Eleanor interjected, her voice stronger now, fingers clasped firmly around the protective amulet. Material treasures are meaningless against a human life. Lord Blackwood nodded in acknowledgement of her declaration. The mirror shall be cleansed and rendered inert, Morbidus. Your essence shall return to the void, and the portal shall be sealed against future incursions. The ritual approached its crescendo as Lord Blackwood strategically positioned consecrated minerals around the mirror's perimeter, creating a pattern that constrained the entity's manifestation to increasingly limited space. Morbidus thrashed violently within these boundaries, its crimson eyes flaring with ancient malice. Everett Blackwood, it hissed, adopting a more intimate tone. Your brother faced me once before, you know, in the Scottish Highlands where you believed he perished in a hunting accident. Shall I reveal how he truly died, the bargain he attempted to strike, the secrets he wished to conceal from your family legacy? Lord Blackwood's rhythm faltered momentarily, a brief hesitation that the entity immediately exploited. A tendril of shadow lashed out, striking his shoulder with concentrated malevolence, searing through fabric to the flesh beneath. He suppressed a cry of pain, maintaining his position despite the injury. Alexander died honorably, confronting your kind, Lord Blackwood responded, resuming the ritual with renewed determination. Your attempts to tarnish his memory shall not deter me. Such admirable fraternal loyalty, Morbidus mocked. Yet how little you truly knew him. He sought to release me upon your family estate, Everett. His resentment toward your father's preference for the younger son festered into murderous intent. Eleanor gasped, her concentration wavering. Everett, is there truth in these claims? Focus, Eleanor, Lord Blackwood commanded sharply. It manipulates half-truths to create discord. We cannot afford distraction at this juncture. The entity, sensing their momentary disunity, launched a final desperate assault. The chamber's temperature plummeted further, frost crystallizing upon the stone floor in elaborate patterns. The mirror's surface bulged outward as Morbidus attempted to fully manifest beyond its confines. Lord Blackwood seized this opportunity, plunging the silver dagger into the center of the distorted surface. By blood of the Guardian freely given, I seal this portal. By name spoken in power, I banish you, Morbidus, to the void between realms. A thunderous crack resonated throughout the chamber as the mirror's surface fractured along precise lines that corresponded to the arcane symbols surrounding it. Crimson light erupted from these fissures, accompanied by a howl of primal rage and frustration. The entity's form disintegrated into wisps of shadow that were inexorably drawn back into the fragmenting mirror. This is not conclusion, but merely intermission. Morbidus's voice echoed as its presence diminished. I shall find another portal, another bloodline. The hunger transcends banishment, Guardian. With a final implosion of energy, the mirror collapsed inward, its fragments transmuting into a fine crystalline powder that glowed momentarily before fading to inert dust. The oppressive atmosphere dissipated, warmth gradually returning to the chamber as reality reasserted its dominance. Lord Blackwood exhaled deeply, his posture relaxing slightly, though vigilance remained evident in his stance. It is done. The entity has been banished, and the portal sealed. Thornfield Hall should be free of its influence. Eleanor stepped cautiously beyond her protective circle, approaching Lord Blackwood with concern etched upon her features. You're injured, Everett. The creature's touch has marked you. Indeed, the fabric of his shirt had been burned away at the shoulder, revealing a wound resembling a severe frostbite. The flesh blackened and withered in a distinctive pattern. A superficial injury, he dismissed. Though the pain was evident in his tightly controlled expression, it shall heal with appropriate treatment. What the entity said about Alexander, Eleanor began hesitantly, contained sufficient truth to wound, yet distorted to serve its purposes, Lord Blackwood acknowledged grimly. Alexander did confront a similar entity in Scotland, though the circumstances differed significantly from Morbidus's implications. Such is the nature of these creatures. They perceive our deepest uncertainties and exploit them mercilessly. Dawn's first light began to filter through the tower's solitary window, casting the chamber in a gentle golden illumination that banished the lingering shadows of the night's confrontation. Lord Blackwood collected the remnants of the ritual components, ensuring no trace remained that might serve as anchor for future manifestations. We must check on Catherine immediately, he stated, securing the silver dagger within its sheath. If the ritual succeeded completely, her condition should begin to improve rapidly. Together they descended the winding staircase, the north tower feeling noticeably lighter without the malevolent presence that had infused its stones for 7 years. Servants observed their passage with curious expressions, noting the signs of supernatural confrontation. Lord Blackwood's injured shoulder, their dishevelled appearances, and the unmistakable aura of those who had witnessed phenomena beyond mortal comprehension. The bedchamber where Lady Catherine lay remained shrouded in perpetual twilight, heavy curtains drawn against the morning sun. As Lord Blackwood and Eleanor entered, the lady's maid rose from her vigilant position beside the bed, her expression a mixture of exhaustion and cautious optimism. "My lady," she addressed Eleanor in hushed tones, "there has been a change. Lady Catherine's fever broke shortly after midnight, and her breathing has grown stronger. I dared not hope yet." Eleanor rushed to her sister's bedside, tears of relief forming in her eyes as she observed the subtle yet significant improvements in Catherine's condition. The deathly pallor had receded slightly, replaced by the faintest blush of returning vitality upon her cheeks. Her breathing, previously shallow and labored, now maintained a steadier rhythm. "Catherine?" Eleanor called softly, taking her sister's hand between her own. "Can you hear me, dearest?" Lady Catherine's eyelids fluttered momentarily before opening, revealing eyes that had regained a fraction of their former brilliance. Her gaze, previously unfocused and distant, now fixed upon Eleanor with dawning recognition. "The shadows," she whispered, her voice frail yet noticeably stronger than during Lord Blackwood's previous visit. "They've receded. I can no longer feel their cold embrace upon my spirit." Lord Blackwood approached the bedside, maintaining a respectful distance to avoid overwhelming the recovering woman. "The entity that plagued you has been banished, Lady Catherine. It shall trouble your dreams no more." Catherine's gaze shifted toward him, a ghost of her former vivacity briefly illuminating her features. "Lord Blackwood, you confronted the Crimson Shadow, as I foresaw in my fever dreams. Such courage merits profound gratitude." "No gratitude is necessary," he responded with formal courtesy. "The Blackwood family has stood as guardians against such entities for generations. I merely fulfilled my ancestral obligation." Eleanor turned toward him, her expression earnest. "You risked your life and suffered injury on our behalf, Everett. Do not diminish the significance of your intervention with talk of mere obligation." Lord Blackwood inclined his head in acknowledgement, conceding the point without verbal response. "Lady Catherine requires nourishment to rebuild her strength. I shall prepare a tonic from my personal supplies, herbs and minerals specifically selected to counteract the lingering effects of spectral predation." He withdrew from the bedchamber, leaving the sisters to their reunion while he attended to the preparation of restorative compounds carried within his valise. The servants observed his movements with newfound respect and curiosity, whispers following in his wake as he traversed the corridors of Thornfield Hall. In the kitchen, he encountered Mrs. Peterson, who supervised the preparation of a light broth intended for Lady Catherine. "The entire household speaks of miraculous developments, my lord," she remarked, her earlier reticence replaced by cautious optimism. "They say you confronted the malevolence that has shadowed Thornfield these past years." "Rumors often exceed reality, Mrs. Peterson," Lord Blackwood replied diplomatically, while measuring precise quantities of powdered herbs into a silver vessel. "Lady Catherine's constitution has proven resilient, and with proper care, she should regain her former vitality within a fortnight." The housekeeper's shrewd gaze suggested she understood the deliberate understatement, yet she respected his discretion. "Indeed, my lord, the Huntington women have always possessed remarkable fortitude. Might I inquire as to the nature of your preparation?" "A family recipe," he explained, adding heated water to the herbal mixture. "The precise components remain a Blackwood secret, I'm afraid, though I assure you they contain nothing harmful or exotic, merely concentrated forms of commonly known medicinal herbs." Upon returning to Catherine's bedchamber with both the broth and his tonic, Lord Blackwood discovered a transformation already underway. Eleanor had assisted her sister to a semi-reclined position against plumped pillows, and a maid had carefully arranged her hair into a simple yet becoming style. Though still evidently weakened, Catherine now possessed an aura of convalescence rather than decline. "You must consume this in its entirety," Lord Blackwood instructed, presenting the silver vessel containing his preparation. "The flavor is admittedly unpleasant, yet its efficacy is beyond dispute." Catherine accepted the vessel with a tremulous smile. "After enduring spectral visitations, Lord Blackwood, I dare say unpalatable medicine represents a minor inconvenience." She consumed the tonic with determination, grimacing slightly at its bitterness, yet draining the vessel completely. Lord Blackwood nodded in approval, observing the immediate effects as subtle color suffused her complexion. "The broth should follow immediately," he advised. "Your physical form requires substantial nourishment to repair the damage inflicted by the entity's feeding. Eleanor assisted her sister with the broth, her movements gentle yet efficient. "Dr. Harrison shall visit this afternoon to assess your condition, Catherine. He will scarcely believe his eyes, considering his prognosis merely yesterday." "Physicians are limited by their understanding of conventional maladies," Lord Blackwood commented. "When confronted with supernatural afflictions, their diagnostic capabilities prove woefully inadequate." Catherine's gaze turned contemplative. "The creature, what was its nature, Lord Blackwood?" "Throughout my ordeal, I sensed an ancient intelligence behind the predation, a consciousness that derived satisfaction not merely from sustenance but from the suffering its feeding induced." Lord Blackwood considered his response carefully, balancing truth against the potential for renewed distress. "It was a sanguine spectre, an entity that exists between realms, sustaining itself through the extraction of human vitality. Such creatures are drawn to locations marked by tragedy or significant emotional residue, establishing portals through specific objects that serve as anchors to our realm." "The mirror in Father's collection," Eleanor interjected with dawning comprehension. "He acquired it during his final expedition to Egypt, claiming it possessed unique historical significance." "Indeed," Lord Blackwood confirmed. "Artifacts of antiquity often harbor attachments to entities long forgotten by contemporary scholarship. Your father likely remained unaware of its true nature until too late." Catherine shuddered visibly. "It spoke to me during its visitations, whispers of seductive malevolence promising forbidden knowledge in exchange for continued access to my essence. In moments of greatest weakness, I confess the offers held terrible appeal." "Such is their methodology," Lord Blackwood explained. "They exploit vulnerability through promises tailored to the victim's deepest desires or insecurities. Your resistance speaks to exceptional strength of character, Lady Catherine." The lady's maid approached with fresh linens, suggesting it might be appropriate to allow Lady Catherine a period of rest, following her first substantial nourishment in weeks. Lord Blackwood and Eleanor acquiesced, withdrawing to the adjacent sitting room to continue their discussion in private. "The entity has been banished," Eleanor stated once they were alone. "Yet you maintain a vigilant demeanor. Are there lingering concerns regarding Catherine's recovery?" Lord Blackwood's expression remained grave. "The physical effect shall diminish progressively, yet the psychological impact of such an ordeal cannot be underestimated. Lady Catherine endured weeks of systematic spiritual predation by an intelligence that penetrated her innermost thoughts. Such violations leave scars invisible to the physical eye." "How might we address these hidden wounds?" Eleanor inquired, her protective instincts evident. "Time, security, and patience," Lord Blackwood advised. "Ensure she remains surrounded by familiar comforts and trustworthy companions. Gradually reintroduce natural light into her environment, as darkness may trigger associations with the entity's visitations, and perhaps most importantly, acknowledge the reality of her experiences rather than dismissing them as fever dreams or imagination." Eleanor nodded thoughtfully. "I shall remain constantly vigilant for signs of distress or regression. The Thornfield staff shall receive explicit instructions regarding her care." "I recommend the chamber's complete refurbishment," Lord Blackwood added. "New furnishings, different wall coverings, a transformation that eliminates all physical reminders of her ordeal. The human mind forms powerful associations between environments and traumatic experiences." Their conversation continued well into the afternoon, developing comprehensive strategies for Catherine's continued recovery, while Lord Blackwood shared carefully selected information regarding sanguine spectres and protective measures against further supernatural incursions. Throughout their discussion, servants periodically delivered reports of Lady Catherine's improving condition, each hour bringing incremental yet significant progress toward restoration of her former vitality. 3 days following the banishment ritual, Thornfield Hall had undergone a remarkable transformation. Windows previously shuttered now admitted abundant sunlight, dispelling the lingering shadows that had accumulated during Morbidus's influence. Servants moved through corridors with lighter steps, their hushed, fearful whispers replaced by more customary household conversations. Even the gardens showed signs of renewal, as if the estate itself celebrated liberation from malevolent presence. Lord Blackwood observed these changes from the library window, his injured shoulder now properly bandaged and healing, though the distinctive pattern of the spectral burn would undoubtedly leave a permanent mark, another scar to join those accumulated throughout his years as guardian. The door opened behind him, revealing Mr. Graves with a silver salver bearing correspondence. "Your messages from London have arrived, my lord," the butler announced, presenting several sealed envelopes. "And Lady Eleanor requests your presence in the East Drawing-Room at your convenience. Lady Catherine has joined her for afternoon tea, her first venture beyond her bedchamber." "Most encouraging news," Lord Blackwood remarked, accepting the correspondence. "Please inform Lady Eleanor that I shall attend them shortly, once I have reviewed these communications." Alone once more, he examined the letters. Several bore the insignia of the Blackwood estate, undoubtedly updates from Mrs. Holloway regarding household matters. One, however, drew his immediate attention, a missive sealed with red wax bearing the impression of an obscure symbol recognized only by initiates of certain esoteric societies. Breaking the seal, he unfolded the parchment, his expression growing increasingly grave as he absorbed its contents. "Concerning developments indeed," he murmured to himself, securing the letter within an inner pocket of his waistcoat before proceeding to the east drawing-room. The transformation in Lady Catherine's appearance since their confrontation with Morbidus was nothing short of remarkable. Though still somewhat diminished from her former vivacity, she now sat upright in a comfortable armchair, dressed in a becoming day gown of pale blue silk, her golden hair arranged in an elegant coiffure. The deathly pallor had receded entirely, replaced by healthy coloration that improved visibly with each passing day. "Lord Blackwood," she greeted him with a genuine smile. "How fortuitous that you should join us. Eleanor and I were just discussing plans for a small musical evening, once my strength permits, perhaps within a fortnight. Your recovery progresses admirably," he observed, taking the seat indicated by Eleanor. "The efficacy of the tonics has exceeded even my expectations." Eleanor poured tea with practiced elegance. "Dr. Harrison departed an hour ago, utterly confounded by Catherine's improvement. He spoke of miraculous recoveries and exceptional constitutions, having no framework to comprehend the true circumstances. Let him attribute it to medical mysteries," Catherine suggested, with a hint of her former mischievousness. "Some truths exceed conventional understanding and are best left to those prepared to confront them." Lord Blackwood accepted the offered teacup. "A wise perspective, Lady Catherine. The boundaries between acknowledged reality and the supernatural remain necessarily obscured for the majority of society. Few possess the temperament to incorporate such knowledge into their worldview without detrimental effects. Yet you have navigated these boundaries since childhood, from what Eleanor has shared of your family history," Catherine observed, her perceptive gaze studying his composed features. "What compels the Blackwood line to assume such extraordinary responsibilities?" Lord Blackwood considered his response carefully. "Ancestral obligation, intertwined with specialized knowledge, passed through generations. The first Blackwood Guardian encountered supernatural entities during the Crusades, returning to England with both Eastern mystical knowledge and a solemn duty to confront malevolent manifestations that occasionally breach the veil between realms. A considerable burden for one family to bear," Eleanor commented, her expression sympathetic. "The responsibility is not exclusively ours," Lord Blackwood clarified. "Various bloodlines throughout Europe maintain similar vigilance, each with territories traditionally under their protection. The Blackwood jurisdiction encompasses much of England's northern counties and parts of Scotland." Catherine leaned forward slightly, her curiosity evident. "You speak of territories and jurisdictions as if describing an organized fellowship. Does such a structured association exist among these guardian bloodlines?" A brief smile touched Lord Blackwood's lips. "Your perception remains impressive despite recent tribulations, Lady Catherine. Indeed, there exists a loose confederation, the Council of Light, that convenes biennially to share knowledge, document supernatural encounters, and coordinate responses to significant threats." "How extraordinary," Eleanor exclaimed, "that such activities occur beyond public awareness, while society concerns itself with trivial matters of fashion and social standing." "The veil of secrecy serves essential purposes," Lord Blackwood explained. "Historical persecution of those with knowledge of the supernatural created necessary discretion. Even in our supposedly enlightened era, such revelations would likely prompt either dismissive ridicule or destructive panic." Their conversation continued along these lines, with Lord Blackwood sharing carefully selected information regarding supernatural entities and protective measures that might be implemented within Thornfield Hall. Throughout this exchange, he observed Catherine with professional assessment, noting her sustained attention and thoughtful inquiries as positive indicators of recovery. As afternoon progressed toward evening, Catherine eventually displayed signs of fatigue, prompting Eleanor to suggest her return to her chambers for rest before dinner. Once Catherine had withdrawn, accompanied by her lady's maid, the atmosphere between the remaining occupants shifted subtly. "There are matters we must discuss privately, Eleanor," Lord Blackwood stated, his tone more serious than during their previous conversation. "Information has reached me from London that bears directly upon recent events at Thornfield." Eleanor's expression grew concerned. "Something in your correspondence, I presume?" You seemed preoccupied upon entering the drawing room. Indeed, he confirmed, retrieving the sealed letter from his waistcoat. This communication comes from a trusted associate within the Council of Light, an individual who specializes in researching patterns of supernatural manifestations throughout Britain. He hesitated momentarily before continuing. The entity we confronted, Morbidus, was not randomly drawn to Thornfield through your father's acquisition of the Egyptian mirror. Evidence suggests a deliberate and calculated targeting of your family bloodline spanning several generations. Eleanor's complexion paled slightly. What possible reason would such an entity have for specifically pursuing the Huntington lineage? The letter references historical records indicating that your ancestress, Lady Margaret Huntington, successfully banished a similar entity in the early 17th century, utilizing knowledge obtained during the family's diplomatic service in Venice. This confrontation created an ancestral enmity, a supernatural vendetta, if you will, that has manifested periodically throughout your family history. But that would suggest, Eleanor began, her voice trailing off as implications became clear. Multiple incidents previously attributed to natural causes or misfortune may have supernatural origins, Lord Blackwood confirmed grimly. The sudden demise of your mother during childbirth, your paternal grandfather's mysterious illness, and potentially other Huntington tragedies through generations. Eleanor rose from her seat, moving toward the window with evident distress. Are you suggesting that our family has been systematically targeted by malevolent entities across centuries, that Catherine's affliction represents merely the most recent manifestation of an ancient vendetta? The evidence supports such a conclusion, Lord Blackwood acknowledged, joining her at the window. However, this knowledge provides strategic advantage. Now identified, the pattern can be disrupted through appropriate protective measures. What form might such protection take? Eleanor inquired, her practical nature asserting itself despite the disturbing revelations. Lord Blackwood outlined a comprehensive strategy involving structural modifications to Thornfield Hall, incorporation of protective symbols into architectural elements, strategic placement of specific minerals known to repel supernatural entities, and rituals to establish permanent wards around the estate's perimeter. Additionally, he continued, both you and Catherine should receive basic training in recognition of supernatural manifestations and preliminary defensive measures. The Blackwood Library contains several texts suitable for novice practitioners that I shall make available to you. Eleanor's expression reflected a complex mixture of emotions, fear, determination, and a certain resigned acceptance of extraordinary circumstances. Our lives have irrevocably transformed, haven't they? We can never return to blissful ignorance of these realities. Knowledge invariably transforms its possessor, Lord Blackwood replied softly. Yet I would argue that informed vigilance, however burdensome, remains preferable to vulnerable ignorance. You and Catherine have demonstrated remarkable resilience, qualities essential for those who walk the boundary between conventional reality and the supernatural. As twilight descended upon Thornfield Hall, they continued their discussion, formulating plans that would forever alter the estate's nature, while ensuring its inhabitants remained protected against future incursions from beyond the veil. Lord Blackwood found himself increasingly impressed by Eleanor's pragmatic approach to these revelations. Her questions were incisive, her suggestions practical, and her resolve unwavering, despite the paradigm-shifting information presented. There is one additional matter we must address, he eventually stated, as their conversation neared conclusion. My responsibilities in London cannot be neglected indefinitely. I must return within a fortnight to attend to pressing matters related to both mundane and supernatural concerns. Eleanor's expression reflected momentary alarm at Lord Blackwood's mention of departure. Surely you cannot consider leaving while Catherine remains vulnerable to supernatural influences. The entity may have been banished, yet you yourself indicated potential for renewed incursions. The protective measures we shall implement before my departure will establish substantial barriers against malevolent entities, Lord Blackwood assured her. Moreover, I do not intend to abandon Thornfield entirely to its fate. I propose regular visitations to maintain and strengthen these protective measures, along with continued correspondence regarding any unusual occurrences that might warrant immediate intervention. Their conversation was interrupted by Mr. Graves, who appeared at the doorway with uncharacteristic hesitation. Forgive the intrusion, my lady, my lord. During the commencement of renovations to the North Tower as instructed, the workmen discovered a concealed compartment within the uppermost chamber. Its contents appear unusual in nature. Lord Blackwood and Eleanor exchanged significant glances before following the butler to the North Tower, which now bustled with activity as workmen removed damaged furnishings and prepared surfaces for renovation. In the uppermost chamber, where they had confronted Morbidus, a section of stone flooring had been removed, revealing a small cavity containing a leather-bound journal and a wooden box approximately the size of a large book. The workmen were reluctant to handle these items given recent events, Mr. Graves explained. They requested immediate notification of their discovery. Lord Blackwood knelt beside the cavity, examining the items without touching them. His trained senses detected no immediate supernatural emanations, though centuries of guardianship had taught the Blackwood line to exercise caution with discovered artifacts. "Prudent decision," he commented, donning a pair of gloves from his pocket before carefully lifting the journal. The leather binding bore no title, though a stylized emblem had been impressed into its cover, a symbol resembling an Egyptian ankh intertwined with European alchemical notations. "My father's personal cipher," Eleanor whispered, recognizing the emblem. "He utilized it in his private correspondence and research notes." Lord Blackwood opened the journal cautiously, revealing pages filled with meticulous handwriting, diagrams of arcane significance, and what appeared to be ritual instructions in multiple languages. "Your father's occult investigations were considerably more extensive than previously indicated," he observed, scanning the initial entries. "This journal documents a systematic exploration of supernatural phenomena spanning several decades." "I had known of his scholarly interest in esoteric subjects," Eleanor replied, her voice tinged with disbelief. "Yet this suggests practical application rather than mere academic curiosity." The wooden box, upon careful examination, contained a collection of unusual artifacts, a silver medallion bearing inscriptions similar to Lord Blackwood's protective amulet, several vials containing substances of indeterminate nature, and a smaller leather pouch holding what appeared to be rare minerals and crystalline formations. "A practitioner's kit," Lord Blackwood identified, his expression growing increasingly grave. "These are tools for one who actively engages with supernatural forces, rather than merely studying them theoretically." They transported these discoveries to the library, where proper examination could be conducted in more appropriate surroundings. For several hours, Lord Blackwood methodically reviewed the journal's contents, while Eleanor alternated between assisting his investigation and checking on Catherine's continued recovery. As midnight approached, he finally closed the journal, his countenance troubled by its revelations. "Your father was no mere curious scholar, Eleanor. This journal documents his initiation into an obscure occult society, the Brotherhood of the Crimson Dawn, whose practices align with what we would classify as grey workings." "Grey workings?" Eleanor inquired, unfamiliar with the terminology. "Neither entirely benevolent nor malevolent in intention, yet dangerous in their ambiguity and potential for misinterpretation," Lord Blackwood explained. "The Brotherhood sought knowledge of realms beyond conventional reality, establishing communications with entities residing therein. Their philosophy held that such beings were neither inherently evil nor good, merely different in nature and comprehension from humanity." Eleanor considered this information thoughtfully, a perspective that seems reasonable in abstract discussion, yet proved catastrophic in practical application. "Precisely," Lord Blackwood confirmed. "Entities such as Morbidus exploit such philosophical openings. They present initially as neutral or even beneficial presences, gradually revealing their predatory nature only after establishing sufficient influence within our realm." The journal's later entries documented Lord Huntington's growing fascination with a specific entity he encountered through ritual communication, one he identified only as the Illuminator. The final pages described his acquisition of the Egyptian mirror and preparations for a grand ritual intended to establish permanent communication with this entity. "He believed himself to be establishing a beneficial connection," Eleanor observed sadly, reading over Lord Blackwood's shoulder. "There is no indication he understood the true nature of what he contacted. A common tragedy among isolated practitioners," Lord Blackwood commented. "Without the collective knowledge and experience of organizations like the Council of Light, individual occultists frequently mistake predatory entities for benevolent or neutral ones. The most dangerous entities are precisely those most skilled at presenting attractive facades." Further examination of the journal revealed additional concerning information. Lord Huntington had performed preliminary rituals involving blood offerings, creating mystical connections to his family lineage that the entity could subsequently exploit. These connections explained how Morbidus had established influence over Catherine, despite being bound to the mirror following Lord Huntington's death. The implications extend beyond Thornfield. Lord Blackwood stated, indicating specific passages. Your father mentions sister lodges of the Brotherhood operating throughout Britain and continental Europe. If similar rituals were performed at multiple locations, numerous potential incursion points may exist, requiring investigation by your council, Eleanor concluded, with growing understanding of the situation's complexity, hence your necessary return to London. Indeed, this journal must be presented to the council's archivists for thorough analysis. The Brotherhood's activities represent a systematic vulnerability in the barriers between realms, one potentially more extensive than previously recognized. Their conversation was interrupted by a soft knock at the library door. Catherine entered, wrapped in a dressing gown, her expression concerned. I awakened and found myself quite alone. The house feels different tonight. Lord Blackwood and Eleanor exchanged glances, silently debating how much to reveal regarding their discoveries. After momentary hesitation, Eleanor opted for honesty, gesturing for her sister to join them. We have discovered Father's private journal, she explained, indicating the leather-bound volume. It contains information regarding his occult investigations and the circumstances that ultimately led to recent events. Catherine's gaze lingered on the journal, her expression complex. I suspected something of this nature, she admitted quietly. In the weeks before his death, Father spoke to me of extraordinary discoveries, revelations that would transform our understanding of existence. I dismissed it as scholarly enthusiasm, yet his intensity suggested something more profound. Did he share specific details of these revelations? Lord Blackwood inquired, his tone carefully neutral. Nothing of substance, Catherine replied. Merely cryptic references to beings of pure knowledge and transcendence of mortal limitations. He promised to include me in his work once preparations were complete. This new information aligned with the journal's contents, suggesting Lord Huntington had intended to expand his communication with the Illuminator to include other family members. Whether this represented paternal concern for his daughter's spiritual enlightenment or unwitting preparation of additional vessels for Morbidus's manifestation remained disturbingly ambiguous. The entity deceived him completely, Lord Blackwood concluded. He believed himself to be working towards spiritual advancement while inadvertently creating conduits for predatory influence. Catherine moved to the window, gazing out at the moonlit grounds of Thornfield. How bitter the irony that Father's pursuit of enlightenment should cast such darkness upon our household. One cannot help but wonder if genuine communion with benevolent entities beyond our realm is possible, or if all such attempts inevitably attract predators. The Council's records document successful communications with beneficial entities, Lord Blackwood replied. However, such interactions require extensive preparations, multiple experienced practitioners, and protective measures far beyond those available to isolated individuals or clandestine brotherhoods. The night deepened around Thornfield Hall. As they continued their discussion, three individuals now irrevocably connected by shared knowledge of realms beyond conventional reality. Lord Blackwood observed subtle changes in both sisters, a new awareness in their gaze, a certain guardedness in their posture, the inevitable transformations that accompanied initiation into hidden truths. The following week witnessed methodical transformation of Thornfield Hall from vulnerable estate to fortified sanctuary against supernatural influence. Under Lord Blackwood's guidance, specific modifications were incorporated throughout the structure. Protective symbols discreetly integrated into renovated architectural elements, strategic placement of crystalline formations at key junctures, and ritual cleansing of spaces previously tainted by Morbidus's presence. The North Tower requires most extensive attention, Lord Blackwood explained, as they surveyed ongoing renovations. Having served as the entity's primary manifestation point, its very stones have absorbed malevolent residue that must be neutralized before the space can be safely repurposed. Eleanor observed the workmen applying a specialized mixture to the tower's interior walls, a solution Lord Blackwood had prepared containing pulverized herbs, minerals, and other components from his personal supplies. What function do you propose for this space once cleansed? I confess I had considered sealing it permanently. Sealing creates problematic associations, he advised. Forbidden spaces generate curiosity and potential future exploration by uninformed individuals. Better to transform it entirely, perhaps as an observatory or study. Positive utilization helps dispel lingering negative energies. Catherine had thrown herself into these preparations with unexpected enthusiasm, her recovery progressing rapidly as she focused on practical protective measures. She demonstrated particular aptitude for identifying subtle manifestations of supernatural influence, detecting residual traces of Morbidus's presence in locations throughout Thornfield that others had overlooked. "I possess natural sensitivity to ethereal energies," Lord Blackwood observed, as Catherine correctly identified a previously undiscovered focus of residual influence within a rarely used parlor. Such abilities often develop or intensify following direct exposure to supernatural entities, a peculiar gift arising from traumatic experience, Catherine remarked with wry humor. "Though I confess certain aspects prove useful, the constant awareness of energies beyond normal perception can be rather overwhelming. Techniques exist to modulate such sensitivity," Lord Blackwood offered. "Meditative practices developed by Eastern mystics and adapted by the Council for Western Practitioners. I shall provide basic instruction before my departure." The evening found them gathered in the library, where Lord Blackwood had arranged selected volumes from his personal collection, introductory texts covering fundamental protective measures, recognition of supernatural manifestations, and basic defensive rituals suitable for novice practitioners. These would remain at Thornfield as reference materials following his return to London. These texts represent carefully distilled knowledge accessible without extensive background in esoteric studies, he explained, indicating specific volumes. "I have marked passages of particular relevance to Thornfield's situation and the Huntington family's specific vulnerabilities." Eleanor examined one such volume, a leather-bound manuscript entitled "Practical Defensive Measures Against Ethereal Incursions" by an author identified only as "a guardian of the Western Territories." 1789. Its pages contained precise diagrams, ritual instructions, and case studies documenting successful banishments of various supernatural entities. "The scope of this hidden knowledge is rather astounding," she commented. "One contemplates how history might have unfolded differently had such information been widely available during periods of superstitious persecution." "A complex consideration," Lord Blackwood acknowledged. "Widespread distribution risks misapplication by the unprepared or exploitation by those with malevolent intentions. Yet restricted access ensures periodic rediscovery of dangerous practices by isolated investigators like your father, lacking contextual understanding of associated risks." Catherine, meanwhile, had gravitated toward a slimmer volume focused on meditative techniques for managing ethereal sensitivity. These exercises bear remarkable similarity to practices our governess taught during childhood, techniques she claimed originated from Hindu mystics encountered during her husband's diplomatic service in India. "Many protective methodologies share common origins," Lord Blackwood explained. "The Council documents parallel developments across diverse cultures, protective measures independently discovered by sensitives throughout history when confronted with similar supernatural phenomena." Their educational sessions continued nightly, with practical applications conducted during daylight hours. Lord Blackwood observed both sisters' progress with approval, Eleanor demonstrating methodical mastery of protective rituals, while Catherine's natural sensitivity allowed intuitive application of defensive techniques. Together, they represented complementary approaches to supernatural defense that would serve Thornfield well following his departure. As his intended departure date approached, Lord Blackwood conducted final assessments of Thornfield's enhanced protections. The estate now featured multiple layers of defense, physical modifications incorporating protective materials, energetic barriers established through ritual, and human vigilance informed by appropriate knowledge. "The fundamental transformation is complete," he declared during their final evening consultation. "Thornfield now stands as one of the most comprehensively protected estates in northern England, comparable to properties maintained by council members themselves." Eleanor regarded him with a mixture of gratitude and lingering concern. "Yet you recommend continued vigilance despite these extensive measures. Eternal vigilance remains the price of security where supernatural forces are concerned," Lord Blackwood confirmed. "The protective measures established will deter casual incursions and provide warning of more determined attempts. However, no defense proves absolutely impenetrable against an entity of sufficient determination and power." Catherine closed the volume she had been studying. "What specific signs might indicate renewed supernatural interest in Thornfield, beyond the obvious manifestations we experienced with Morbidus?" "Subtle atmospheric changes often provide earliest indication, unexplained temperature fluctuations in specific locations, unusual behavior among household pets or wildlife on the estate grounds, recurring patterns in servants' dreams, or reported sensations," Lord Blackwood detailed. I've compiled a comprehensive list of preliminary indicators in the reference material marked Primary Assessment Protocols. Their discussion continued into the night, addressing potential scenarios and appropriate responses. Lord Blackwood found himself increasingly confident in the sisters' preparedness. Their questions demonstrated growing sophistication regarding supernatural matters, while their practical applications of protective measures showed remarkable precision for novice practitioners. As midnight approached, their conversation shifted toward arrangements for continued communication following his departure. "I shall establish regular correspondence," he assured them. "Monthly communications at minimum, with immediate availability should concerning developments arise." "And will you visit Thornfield again?" Catherine inquired, her tone suggesting the question carried significance beyond mere practical considerations. Lord Blackwood met her gaze directly. "Quarterly inspections would be prudent to maintain optimal protective measures, more frequent visitations, should circumstances warrant." An unspoken understanding passed between them, an acknowledgement of connections established through shared extraordinary experiences that transcended conventional social interactions. Catherine's expression softened momentarily before she composed herself into more socially appropriate decorum. "Thornfield shall welcome your return whenever circumstances permit," she stated with formal courtesy, though her eyes conveyed deeper sentiment. The following morning, Lord Blackwood supervised final adjustments to Thornfield's protective arrangements. Silver-infused mortar had been applied to strategic locations throughout the estate, creating a connected network of protective boundaries. Specially prepared crystals were positioned at cardinal points of the property, establishing an energetic perimeter that would alert the sisters to any significant supernatural approach. "The systems are now self-sustaining," he explained as they walked the grounds, "requiring only minimal maintenance through quarterly renewal rituals detailed in the reference materials." As his carriage was prepared for departure, Lord Blackwood conducted a final private consultation with Eleanor regarding specific aspects of Thornfield's protection that required periodic verification. Their conversation concluded with practical matters regarding continued correspondence and protocols for emergency communication should concerning developments arise. "The Council maintains a network of messengers with knowledge of supernatural matters," he explained, providing a sealed envelope containing specific instructions. "This contains authentication phrases that will ensure any communication receives immediate priority attention." Eleanor accepted the envelope with appropriate solemnity. "We shall not abuse this privilege through unwarranted alarms, yet take comfort in its availability should genuine need arise." Catherine joined them as the carriage was brought around, having changed into a walking dress of deep burgundy that highlighted her significantly improved complexion and returning vitality. The transformation from her near-death state merely weeks prior was nothing short of remarkable, testament to both her natural resilience and the efficacy of Lord Blackwood's restorative preparations. "Thornfield stands greatly in your debt, Lord Blackwood," she stated, as servants loaded his travelling cases onto the carriage. "Beyond conventional expressions of gratitude, please know that the Huntington family now considers itself allied to the Blackwood guardianship in perpetuity. Such alliances strengthen the broader efforts against supernatural incursions," he acknowledged, bowing formally over her extended hand. "I depart with confidence in Thornfield's security under your vigilant stewardship." The journey back to London proved considerably more contemplative than Lord Blackwood's urgent travel to Thornfield weeks prior. As the carriage traversed the countryside, he reviewed the extraordinary developments at the Huntington estate, from the dire circumstances of his arrival to the significantly improved situation upon departure. Beyond the successful banishment of Morbidus, the discovery of Lord Huntington's involvement with the Brotherhood of the Crimson Dawn represented intelligence of critical importance to the Council of Light. "Thompson," he addressed his coachman during a brief stop to rest the horses, "we shall proceed directly to Berkeley Square upon reaching London, rather than Ravenscroft Manor. Time-sensitive matters require immediate attention." "As you wish, my lord," Thompson acknowledged with practiced deference, though his expression betrayed curiosity regarding his master's altered plans. Lord Blackwood's thoughts returned to the Huntington sisters, their rapid adaptation to supernatural realities, demonstrating exceptional cognitive flexibility. Eleanor's methodical approach to protective measures complemented Catherine's intuitive sensitivity to ethereal energies, together forming a formidable partnership for maintaining Thornfield's security. He found himself particularly impressed by Catherine's resilience, her recovery from Morbidus's predation, proceeding with remarkable speed once the entity's influence had been removed. "Remarkable constitution," he murmured to himself, recalling her vibrant appearance at their parting. The memory stirred unexpected warmth, a sensation he promptly subjected to rigorous analytical examination. Professional admiration for a patient's recovery represented appropriate sentiment. Anything beyond such clinical appreciation would constitute improper distraction from his guardianship responsibilities. As evening approached, the outskirts of London appeared on the horizon, a sprawling metropolis, wreathed in the perpetual haze of countless coal fires. Lord Blackwood's expression grew more severe as they entered the city proper, traversing streets that concealed supernatural threats considerably more numerous and varied than those found in rural settings. Urban environments, with their concentrated human populations experiencing the full spectrum of emotional extremes, created ideal conditions for ethereal incursions. The carriage eventually arrived at an unassuming townhouse in Berkeley Square, a property that outwardly resembled the residences of prosperous professionals, yet contained one of several Council of Light operational centres distributed throughout London. A doorman in conservative livery acknowledged Lord Blackwood's arrival with a subtle gesture that incorporated recognition symbols known only to council members and authorised associates. "Lord Merryweather awaits you in the usual chamber, my lord," the doorman informed him. After verifying his identity, he expressed particular interest in your immediate report upon return. The interior of the townhouse presented a stark contrast to its conventional exterior. Walls lined with protective symbols disguised as decorative mouldings, strategically positioned crystalline formations incorporated into lighting fixtures, and furnishings containing compartments for emergency ritual components. Lord Blackwood proceeded directly to a chamber on the second floor, where Lord William Merryweather, senior coordinator of the Council's British operations, awaited his arrival. "Everett," Merryweather greeted him, dispensing with formal titles as was customary among council members during private consultations. A distinguished gentleman in his 7th decade, Merryweather's appearance suggested a retired military officer rather than one of Britain's foremost authorities on supernatural phenomena. "Your preliminary message indicated significant discoveries at Thornfield Hall. I've postponed the Edinburgh conference specifically to receive your full report." Lord Blackwood produced Lord Huntington's journal from his valise. The situation proved considerably more complex than initially apparent. What began as a straightforward banishment of a sanguine spectre revealed connections to a previously unidentified occult organization, the Brotherhood of the Crimson Dawn, with potentially extensive operations throughout Britain and continental Europe. Merryweather's expression grew grave as he examined the journal. Huntington's personal record. This represents an intelligence windfall of extraordinary significance. Indeed, the Brotherhood appears to practice systematic establishment of communication channels with entities they believe to be neutral or beneficial knowledge providers. Their methodologies create vulnerabilities in barriers between realms that predatory entities like Morbidus exploit with devastating effectiveness. For several hours, they analyzed the journal's contents, mapping connections between identified Brotherhood locations and recent supernatural incidents documented by council agents. Disturbing patterns emerged, a statistically improbable clustering of spectral manifestations in proximity to locations where Lord Huntington had documented sister lodges of his organization. "We must alert field coordinators immediately," Merryweather concluded. "Priority investigations of all identified Brotherhood locations, with banishment teams on standby for confirmed incursions." The Huntington sisters have been fully informed of their father's involvement and trained in basic protective measures, Lord Blackwood reported. "Thornfield Hall has been comprehensively secured against further incursions, with both women demonstrating considerable aptitude for supernatural defense despite their novice status." Merryweather raised an eyebrow. "Full disclosure, Everett. Rather unprecedented for civilians outside established guardian bloodlines. Circumstances necessitated comprehensive information," Lord Blackwood explained. Additionally, both demonstrated exceptional qualities that suggest potential value as council associates. Catherine Huntington, in particular, displays natural sensitivity to ethereal energies intensified by direct exposure to Morbidus. "Interesting development," Merryweather acknowledged. "The Council has historically benefited from incorporating individuals with practical experience of supernatural phenomena. I shall authorize continued educational support for both women, with quarterly assessment of their potential for more formal affiliation." Their consultation concluded with development of strategic responses to the Brotherhood's activities, a coordinated campaign to identify additional lodges, neutralize established incursion points, and potentially salvage useful knowledge from the organization's legitimate research while eliminating dangerous practices. "You've performed exceptional service in this matter, Everett," Merriweather stated, as their meeting concluded. The Council recognizes the significance of your discoveries and the skill demonstrated in addressing the immediate threat while identifying broader implications. Lord Blackwood acknowledged the commendation with appropriate modesty. The guardianship responsibilities of the Blackwood lineage remain my primary motivation. Individual recognition is unnecessary. Nevertheless, your actions merit acknowledgement, Merriweather insisted. The Huntington situation could have resulted in catastrophic expansion of Morbidus's influence had intervention occurred even weeks later. Your timely response and thorough investigation have potentially prevented numerous additional casualties. Following this consultation, Lord Blackwood finally proceeded to Ravencroft Manor, where Mrs. Holloway awaited with characteristic efficiency despite the unexpected alteration to his scheduled return. The manor's familiar surroundings, protective measures established by generations of Blackwood guardians, provided welcome security after weeks confronting active supernatural threat. Your study has been maintained as you left it, my lord, Mrs. Holloway reported as he settled into the comfortable surroundings. Correspondence has been organized according to priority, with council communications separated for immediate attention. Excellent, Mrs. Holloway. I shall require dinner in 1 hour, followed by uninterrupted privacy for the remainder of the evening. Tomorrow morning, please arrange for Mr. Harrison to attend me regarding certain structural modifications I wish to implement based on recent experiences. Alone in his study, Lord Blackwood reviewed the accumulated correspondence, identifying several situations requiring attention. Potential supernatural activities reported by council associates throughout the Blackwood jurisdiction, administrative matters regarding estate management, and social obligations accumulated during his absence. Among these communications, one item drew particular attention, an elegantly penned letter bearing the Huntington family crest. Breaking the seal, he discovered Catherine's distinctive handwriting, a message apparently dispatched shortly before his departure from Thornfield, yet arriving at Ravencroft Manor ahead of his return. My dear Lord Blackwood, though propriety perhaps dictates more reserved expression following our brief acquaintance, extraordinary circumstances surely permit certain liberties in communication. Having confronted mortality's threshold under most unusual conditions, I find conventional social constraints increasingly irrelevant to genuine human connection. Your intervention at Thornfield has transformed not merely our physical security, but our fundamental understanding of existence. Beyond appropriate gratitude for this profound service, I wish to express personal appreciation for your patient guidance during my recovery and subsequent education regarding matters beyond conventional reality. The knowledge you have shared, though initially overwhelming, provides framework for experiences that would otherwise remain distressingly inexplicable. The sensitivity to ethereal energies that emerged following my encounter with Morbidus initially seemed burdensome, a constant awareness of dimensions beyond normal perception. Through your instruction, this awareness increasingly transforms from affliction to asset. I write separately from official correspondence to express hope that your future visits to Thornfield might include opportunity for continued discussion of these extraordinary matters. Few individuals possess both knowledge and temperament to address such topics with balanced perspective, neither dismissing supernatural realities nor surrendering rational assessment to superstition. With sincere regard and appreciation, Catherine Huntington. Lord Blackwood read the letter twice, acknowledging the underlying sentiment with analytical detachment, while appreciating the elegant expression of intellectual connection. Catherine Huntington indeed possessed exceptional qualities beyond her newly developed supernatural sensitivity, an incisive intellect, remarkable adaptability to paradigm-shifting information, and refreshing directness in communication. As he placed the letter in his desk drawer, his thoughts returned to the broader implications of the Thornfield incident. The Brotherhood of the Crimson Dawn represented a significant new factor in the Council's ongoing efforts to maintain barriers between realms, educated individuals inadvertently creating vulnerabilities through misguided pursuit of esoteric knowledge. Unlike superstitious practitioners of folk magic or theatrical charlatans performing manufactured rituals for public consumption, Brotherhood members possessed sufficient authentic knowledge to establish genuine connections with otherworldly entities, yet lacked comprehensive understanding of associated dangers. The coming months would undoubtedly require extensive council resources to address this emerging threat pattern. Lord Blackwood anticipated frequent field operations as investigation of Brotherhood lodges progressed, potentially requiring his personal involvement in multiple banishment rituals should additional entities like Morbidus be discovered. Such responsibilities had defined his existence since formally assuming guardianship duties following his father's death, a solitary path dedicated to confronting threats beyond conventional comprehension. Yet as he contemplated forthcoming obligations, Lord Blackwood found himself considering Catherine's letter and the unexpected connection established through shared extraordinary experience. Perhaps the traditional isolation of guardian bloodlines represented unnecessary limitation rather than practical necessity. As night descended upon London, Lord Blackwood began preparations for continued investigation of the Brotherhood's activities. The Thornfield incident concluded, yet representing merely the opening chapter in a more extensive confrontation with forces beyond the veil of conventional reality. 6 months following the events at Thornfield Hall, the grand ballroom of Lord Merryweather's London residence hosted the Council of Light's biennial gathering. Members from across Europe converged to share discoveries, document supernatural encounters, and coordinate strategic responses to emerging threats. The typically austere proceedings had been modified to accommodate an unprecedented development: the formal introduction of 2 civilians to the Council's extended network of associates. Lord Blackwood observed from across the ballroom as Eleanor and Catherine Huntington engaged in conversation with Lady Victoria Harrington, the Council's foremost authority on protective barrier maintenance. Both sisters had adapted their customary elegant attire to incorporate discreetly positioned protective amulets, functional defenses seamlessly integrated into fashionable appearance. Their transformation from uninformed civilians to knowledgeable practitioners of supernatural defense had progressed with remarkable efficiency under his quarterly guidance. The Huntington women appear to have integrated quite effectively into council society, Lord Merryweather commented, joining Lord Blackwood near the refreshment table. Your assessment of their potential value has proven most accurate. Lady Eleanor's methodical documentation of ethereal patterns at Thornfield has already enhanced our understanding of residual manifestations following banishment procedures. And Catherine's sensitivity continues to develop with proper training, Lord Blackwood added. Her ability to detect subtle incursion attempts now extends beyond intuitive recognition to precise identification of specific entity classifications. Most impressive progress for merely 6 months' formal instruction. Merryweather nodded thoughtfully. The Council has historically underutilized female practitioners, despite documented evidence suggesting women often possess heightened sensitivity to ethereal frequencies. Perhaps this successful integration will encourage reconsideration of traditional recruitment parameters. Their conversation was interrupted as Catherine approached, her burgundy gown complementing the restored vitality evident in her countenance. No casual observer would suspect that merely half a year prior she had hovered at mortality's threshold under supernatural predation. Lord Merryweather, Lord Blackwood, she greeted them with appropriate formality, though her eyes conveyed the comfortable familiarity established through shared extraordinary experiences. Lady Harrington has most generously offered to correspond regarding implementation of enhanced perimeter detection systems at Thornfield. Her expertise regarding crystalline configuration appears particularly applicable to our estate's topographical features. An excellent development, Lord Blackwood acknowledged. Lady Harrington's methodologies have proven exceptionally effective in similar geographical contexts. Lord Merryweather excused himself to attend other guests, leaving Lord Blackwood and Catherine in momentary privacy, despite the crowded ballroom. Their frequent correspondence and his quarterly visits to Thornfield had established a connection that transcended conventional social relationships, a partnership founded in shared knowledge of realms beyond ordinary perception. The Brotherhood investigation progresses, Lord Blackwood informed her, transitioning to matters of mutual professional interest. 17 lodges have been identified and secured thus far, with 5 active incursion points successfully closed through banishment rituals. And the practitioners themselves, Catherine inquired, her concern evident. Are they primarily malevolent or merely misguided like father? Predominantly the latter, he confirmed. Educated individuals pursuing knowledge without comprehensive understanding of associated dangers. The Council has implemented rehabilitation protocols for those demonstrating genuine remorse and willingness to redirect their studies along safer methodologies. Catherine's expression reflected thoughtful consideration. The fundamental human desire for transcendent understanding remains admirable, even when misdirected. One cannot help but sympathize with their initial motivations while recognizing the catastrophic potential of their methodologies. A remarkably balanced perspective, Lord Blackwood observed. Most practitioners require considerable experience before developing such nuanced assessment of supernatural practitioners' motivations. Their conversation continued as they moved toward the terrace, seeking momentary respite from the crowded ballroom. The night air carried the distinctive London mixture of coal smoke and Thames moisture, yet provided welcome freshness after the concentrated social atmosphere within. My sensitivity detected subtle ethereal currents during your most recent visit to Thornfield, Catherine remarked, after ensuring their privacy. Patterns suggesting connection to guardianship bloodlines beyond the Blackwood lineage. You've encountered additional entities since our last meeting. Lord Blackwood raised an eyebrow, impressed by the precision of her observation. Indeed. A minor manifestation near Canterbury, nothing approaching Morbidus's significance, yet requiring personal intervention due to specific characteristics aligned with entities previously confronted by my grandfather. You sustained injury during this confrontation, she stated rather than questioned, her perception extending beyond conventional observation to ethereal awareness of disrupted energy patterns. Superficial consequences only, he assured her, unconsciously adjusting his posture to minimize awareness of the bandaged wound beneath his formal attire. The entity has been successfully banished and affected locations secured against future incursions. Catherine's expression suggested she perceived the understatement in his casual dismissal, yet chose not to pursue the matter further. Thornfield's protective systems function optimally following your last adjustment to the crystalline configuration. No significant disruptions have been detected, though the North Tower occasionally registers minor atmospheric fluctuations during specific lunar phases. Expected residual manifestations, Lord Blackwood confirmed. The tower served as primary manifestation point for an entity of Morbidus's significance. Even with comprehensive cleansing, certain ethereal imprints require extended duration to fully dissipate. Their professional discussion gradually transitioned to more personal matters. Catherine's continued recovery, developments at Thornfield under the sisters' management, and the gradual reintroduction of the estate to broader society through carefully selected social engagements. Throughout this exchange, Lord Blackwood noted the increasing comfort in their communication, a natural rhythm established through shared extraordinary experience and continued correspondence. The Council appears favorably impressed by both you and Eleanor, he observed as their conversation neared conclusion. Lord Merriweather specifically mentioned potential formal affiliation should your development continue at current pace. A possibility we find both daunting and intriguing, Catherine acknowledged, though questions remain regarding practical implications for Thornfield's management should both sisters become actively involved in council operations. Adaptations can be arranged, Lord Blackwood assured her. Many council members maintain conventional social positions and responsibilities while fulfilling supernatural guardianship duties. The Blackwood estates have operated under such dual purpose for generations. Catherine's gaze turned contemplative. The path forward seems increasingly defined by integration rather than separation. Conventional existence, alongside awareness of extraordinary realities, social responsibilities balanced with supernatural guardianship. Perhaps most significantly, traditional isolation transformed through meaningful connection with those who share understanding of realms beyond ordinary perception. The subtle implication in her statement registered clearly in Lord Blackwood's perception. The connection established through their shared confrontation with Morbidus had evolved beyond professional collaboration into something both had privately acknowledged, yet left formally unexpressed. Integration indeed represents the most sustainable approach, he replied, allowing carefully measured personal sentiment to complement professional assessment. Isolated guardianship proves unnecessarily limiting when compatible minds and complementary abilities might instead form more effective partnerships. Their conversation reached natural conclusion as Eleanor appeared at the terrace entrance, indicating the council's formal proceedings were about to commence. As they returned to the ballroom, Lord Blackwood contemplated the extraordinary developments of recent months. A routine banishment assignment transformed into discovery of widespread vulnerabilities, introduction of exceptional new associates to the council's network, and unexpected personal connection established through shared extraordinary experience. The confrontation with darkness had ultimately illuminated possibilities previously unconsidered, not merely regarding supernatural threats and defensive methodologies, but concerning the fundamental nature of guardianship itself. Perhaps the traditional isolation of guardian bloodlines represented unnecessary limitation rather than practical necessity. Perhaps effectiveness might be enhanced through meaningful partnership, rather than solitary vigilance. As the council gathering proceeded with formal recognition of the Huntington sisters' contributions to recent operations, Lord Blackwood found himself contemplating future quarterly visits to Thornfield with heightened anticipation. The crimson shadow had been banished, yet the unexpected light revealed in its aftermath continued to illuminate new possibilities with each passing day. In the dance between shadow and light, we discover that true strength emerges not from isolated vigilance, but through meaningful connection. The crimson shadow reminds us that even the darkest supernatural forces cannot withstand the power of shared knowledge, mutual trust, and collective courage. Lord Blackwood's journey teaches us that traditions, however ancient and respected, must sometimes evolve to embrace new possibilities. His willingness to share closely guarded knowledge with the Huntington sisters not only saved them from immediate danger, but transformed them into powerful allies in an eternal struggle. Catherine's remarkable recovery demonstrates how adversity, even when it brings us to death's threshold, can awaken hidden strengths within us, sensitivities and abilities that transform perceived weakness into extraordinary power when properly understood and directed. Eleanor's practical approach to supernatural threats reflects how rationality need not conflict with acceptance of extraordinary realities. Her methodical integration of protective measures into Thornfield's renovation symbolizes how we might incorporate profound spiritual awareness into our everyday existence without abandoning pragmatic concerns. Perhaps most significantly, this tale reminds us that no darkness, however ancient and terrible, can permanently extinguish the human capacity for resilience, adaptation, and connection. When Lord Huntington unwittingly invited malevolence into his home through isolated pursuit of forbidden knowledge, it was the collaborative efforts of his daughters and a guardian who chose to share rather than hoard his wisdom that ultimately banished the shadows. In our own lives, we too face metaphorical shadows, fears, doubts, and challenges that seem overwhelming when confronted alone. Like the characters in our story, we discover our greatest power not in isolated struggle, but in the courage to share our vulnerabilities, combine our unique strengths, and transform traditional limitations into unprecedented possibilities. The crimson shadows may return in different forms throughout our lives, but with each confrontation, we grow more capable of recognizing their approach, understanding their nature, and joining together to banish their influence, not through fear or superstition, but through knowledge, courage, and the extraordinary power of human connection. Dear esteemed listener, I trust that the Crimson Shadow has transported you to the mysterious world of Lord Blackwood and the Huntington sisters, a Victorian realm where supernatural threats lurk behind the veneer of proper society, where ancient knowledge provides the only defense against malevolent entities from beyond the veil. If you've enjoyed this tale of spectral encounters, forbidden knowledge, and unexpected connections, I implore you to subscribe to our channel for more original Gothic tales that blend supernatural suspense with profound human emotion. Each story in our collection explores different facets of the extraordinary, from haunted estates to ancient family curses, from mysterious artifacts to beings that exist between realms. Your comments are tremendously valuable to us. What aspects of the Crimson Shadow resonated most deeply with you? Did Lord Blackwood's disciplined guardianship capture your imagination? Were you moved by Catherine's remarkable recovery and developing supernatural sensitivity? Perhaps Eleanor's practical approach to extraordinary circumstances reflected your own philosophy when confronting life's mysteries. Share your thoughts below and join our community of listeners who appreciate tales where the veil between worlds grows thin, where ancient knowledge provides the only protection against forces beyond conventional comprehension, and where human connection ultimately proves stronger than the most ancient darkness. Subscribe now to ensure you never miss our next original tale. The shadows gather quickly, dear listener, but together we shall illuminate them with stories that both chill the blood and warm the heart.